All right, let's talk sales. So I've been talking to a lot of business owners and CEOs, and a question that keeps arising is, Ralph, how do we teach our salespeople to better deal with objections? And I hear this talked about a lot, and there's a lot of perspectives. And often, these individuals that are posing this question to me believe that we want to provide a script, okay, that says, when the prospect says A, the salesperson says B, that squashes the objection or the concern, and they can move on towards a positive resolution of the deal. Now, that's great in theory, but it doesn't always work. Okay? Scripted events end up sounding scripted. Okay? And if you're just following a script and not paying attention to the environmental conditions or the personality across the table from you, you end up just going through the script, okay, and letting the result be whatever the result is going to be. And that's not intelligent sales, okay? What that is robotic script reading and checking boxes. And if we're going to do checklist sales, okay, we are going to get fewer results that are favorable, and we're going to have more completed checklists. And I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily want my salespeople to be focused on checking boxes on a list. I want them to be focused on how to get that prospect to a closed won resolution so that we can write the business, close the deal, and move on to the next sale. Right? That's how we hit targets. We don't hit targets by saying, well, Jimmy has checked all the boxes on his sales process checklist, and we didn't win the deal, but he'll continue on and do that checklist again with the next prospect, and hopefully that result will be different. Okay? That is a law of averages approach, which, listen, in sales, there is a law of averages, right? I may deal with the same objection from 12 prospects, and 7 of those 12 prospects are going to decide that the answer that I've given or the explanation that I provided or the evidence that we've shown to support our solution over competitors is not sufficient for them to make that decision in our favor. And there may be 5 others out of that 12 that proceed forward, and we may lose that deal at other parts of the process, or we may be able to bring that over the finish line to a closed won resolution. Okay? But if we're just going to deal with the objection as a confrontation, okay, the result is more than likely not going to be in our favor. And what do I mean by a confrontation? Well, a lot of times when we're talking about objections, okay, we view those as negative. So we put a negative connotation on the objection itself, all right, and then we want to respond to the objection. We want to retort. We want to come back. No, you're wrong. That's not how this goes. That's not what our product or service does. No, look at the benefits here. Look at the solution that I'm providing to you. Look at what you're going to be able to save financially if you go with our solution. Okay, we jump into this defensive mode, and now we're getting into a war of words with our prospect. And it doesn't matter what we're saying, when we get into a war of words with our prospect, that sale turns negative, and that person may find us either inauthentic, okay, dishonest, or aggressive in the sense that we want to close the sale, but we don't want to solve their problem, right? So we don't want to deal with objections always in an aggressive manner. Now, listen, that doesn't mean that there aren't times where we need to deal with those objections head on. Listen, if somebody comes to you and says, I can't make a decision right now, I need to think about it, we can come back on those objections. Okay? Yeah, absolutely. That makes complete sense. You do need to think about it. Maybe I haven't given you enough information to make that decision. Let's take another 5 minutes. Let me walk you through the structure of the deal so you can go away from this conversation armed with the information to actually think about it and come to some sort of conclusion as to whether or not you want to move forward. At least then you're keeping the deal in motion. Everything is about momentum. We don't want the deal to stop. Okay, so if somebody said to you, I want to think about it, and you said, well, there's nothing to think about. I've given you everything you need. Okay, that person is going to immediately put a wall up and want to not deal with you further and try to exit the conversation. And if we get into that place with a prospect, it's very difficult to come back and get them where they're comfortable and want to continue discussing our product or service. So objections are not necessarily these negative things that we have to be afraid of. Okay? When somebody poses a concern, we want to take that opportunity whenever possible, okay, to show that we're more valuable than they previously thought. Okay? That we understand why they have that concern. That's a natural concern. Completely understand it. You should have that concern. Here's what you need to consider, okay, to weigh out whether or not that concern is worth more, okay, than the potential benefits of you moving forward with purchasing our product or service. And if you can get people comfortable enough, okay, to hear you out in making the case for them to reconsider those things that they're viewing as challenges or concerns, you can keep that momentum going and keep that sale proceeding forward. Okay? A lot of times, objections are concerns that are raised, and they may have originated with another individual at another part of the sales process. Okay? It may have been somebody that you had a conversation with in a group setting prior to the one you're having with the prospect today. They may not be present in the moment. Okay? And the prospect's now bringing this concern up, raising this concern, this objection, okay, because they know they're going to have to go back and deal with it with this other person. Okay, maybe somebody in the background who you haven't dealt with in the sales process, and maybe you haven't uncovered that buying influence. Okay, and that is an opportunity for you then to figure out who is that buying influence and how do I get them into the conversation so I can move the sales process forward. Okay, all these people that are in the background influencing the sale may not be at the forefront where you can deal with that situation head on. All right, so when we get too aggressive too quickly, okay, and we don't arm our prospect to go back and deal with that objection themselves, we're not coaching them to deal with that objection themselves, okay, we've put them in a position where they don't have the confidence to go back and talk about that challenge, and they may just allow it to fester and kill the deal. So there's a lot of factors that we have to consider when those objections are raised, okay, and how we want to deal with them to keep the motion of the sale. Momentum. So let's reframe our whole thought about objections. Okay, they're not negative. They're opportunities for us to progress the sale forward. Okay, and when prospects, here's the other piece to think about, when prospects are not raising objections, I get concerned that they're not engaged in the sale process. They may be just going through the motions. They already have a competitor of yours, another solution that they're more interested in. And they're going to raise the concerns and get the answers from that individual. Okay? So the raising of zero objections or zero concerns, okay, is a red flag. Alarm bells should be going off in your head. Okay, so don't be afraid to receive those objections. When the objection is raised, we want our salespeople to stay calm. Take a deep breath. Take a moment. Remain silent. Think through the problem. What is the question that I want to ask? Not to squash the objection, okay? Not to make them forget about the challenge that they've brought up. Not to trick them into thinking about it differently or reframing it. Okay, we want to ask a question that gives them enough pause to say, okay, let's continue the conversation. Let's move forward, okay, and continue to discuss this challenge along with the other items that we're discussing in the deal, all right, and frame all of that under potential conversation either for future group meetings where we're going to get decision makers in a room and start chipping away at some of the loose ends on the deal. Okay. Or if we're not at the presentation phase of our sales cycle, okay, put that as a note so that we can address it later on. You may have been expecting me to talk about if prospect A says these three things, here are three ways for us to deflect. And I'm not going to do that because that's poor sales process. And especially when you're in long sales cycle, B2B sales environments, we want to take our time, okay, and we want to work the deal. Don't work the problem, work the deal. The problem or the objection or the challenge is part of the sales process, part of the deal as a whole. And if we can keep the deal in motion, we will have multiple, not one, multiple opportunities to deal with that objection. When we're in a B2C environment and we're trying to get somebody to close in that conversation, we want to take the same approach, except the sales cycle is a lot shorter. So now we get the objection. We want to take that second. We want to pause. We want to deal with it either via a question or a statement that invokes further conversation, right? Because we want to keep the conversation going. We don't want to make a blanket statement. You're wrong. Here's why. Let's move on. Because you may put that prospect in a defensive mode where they don't want to proceed with the sales conversation anymore. Especially in B2C, where your window may be a lot smaller to close the deal, you do not want to put that person in a defensive mode where they do not want to speak anymore. Because in that B2C environment, they have a quick opportunity to exit the sales process. And they will use it. They will execute on that opportunity if they're that turned off, if they find you that inauthentic, if they find you dishonest, or they feel like it's going down a path where they're no longer comfortable. So in that B2C environment, you want to follow the same procedure, okay? And you may have to come back to that objection or that challenge a few times, but you're going to do it in a shorter amount of time, right? So the objection comes, you may ask a question, make a statement that invokes a further conversation, proceed down. They may come back to that objection again, which is fine. We're going to keep dealing with it till it no longer gets brought up, as long as we're keeping the conversation moving forward. Motion, momentum, that is the goal. So when we're looking at objections and when somebody comes to me and says, Ralph, how do I get my salespeople to better deal with objections in the sales process? Here is how we train those salespeople. Okay? We teach them to not be reactionary. Don't be quick. This isn't about being quick on your feet. Got an answer to that objection. I got something that's going to, sway you away from this challenge that you're concerned about. We want them to stay calm, take a deep breath. Don't be surprised that the objection has been brought up. Okay? Surprise will alarm the prospect. Our salespeople are going to stay calm. Objection comes, salesperson's calm. They think for a second. They pose a question or make a statement that convinces the prospect that it's worth continuing the conversation. In most sales situations, objections cannot be handled in one statement, in one interaction. And a lot of times in B2B, long sales cycle processes, they can't even be handled in that sales meeting. It's something that's going to have to be addressed down the road. So staying calm, asking a question, or making a statement that keeps the sales process proceeding forward is the first objective when dealing with objections. Once we've done that, it gives us time to work out how that objection can affect the deal, who needs to hear our response, our full-throated response to the objection, okay, whether that's providing documentation, case studies, other individuals from our team, okay, third-party stories, referrals, references, reviews, all the tools that we may go reach into our toolbox for in order to convince somebody that that objection that they had, while relevant, is not strong enough for them to ignore the benefits of implementing our solution. When we start to reframe objections as positive opportunities and as positive signs in the sales process, we as salespeople gain more control over the conversation and over the direction of the sale. And that's what we want to do at the end of the day. Keep everything in motion, keep our momentum, and control the direction of the sale. As long as we're doing that, we can allow that sales process to take as long as it has to take for us to close it. So next time somebody says to you, you need to be quicker, we need to come up with 6 things that we're going to say to these objections, think logically about what the objective is, not what the reaction should be. And when you start to think about what your objective is over what your reaction should be, you become a better salesperson.